Welcome to the Distance Learning Center. I am Tu Roger Sama, your geography teacher. Our lesson of today is the opposite students all over national territory. We start this lesson with correction of the assignment. What do you understand by rangeland? Rangelands are vast areas of natural grassland, savannas, or shrubs used for grazing livestock. Vast areas of natural grassland, savanna, used for grazing livestock. Our lesson of today, lesson 83, is centered on flooding. Lesson on flooding. The lesson progresses following a standard plan, which begins lesson objective, previous knowledge, situation in real life, summary of the lesson. We have learning activities, application exercises, and assignments. Lesson objective. After guided lecture, illustration, lecture, demonstration, guided discussion with the opposite students all over the national territory, they should be able to explain the meaning of flooding and describe the trends. They should identify the causes and consequences of flooding. They should explore the measures to cope with and mitigate the effects of flooding. Students have basic knowledge and idea on the notion of global warming and its effects. Here, a practical, real-life problem. It is a video I would like us to watch. We look at the learning activities, meaning of flood or flooding. Here, the image here portrays what flooding is and how we observe this in our different communities. You look at what flood is all about, look at its manifestation. What is flooding? It is a natural phenomenon where water overspill maybe river channel, river banks, and sea walls onto the surface. Floods here are of types. We have river floods, that's fluvial, and then we have coastal floods. So that phenomenon where water overrides its banks and flow to the surface is known as river floods, called fluvial. Coastal floods, we talk about storm surge and rise in sea level, which might be triggered by other natural phenomena, causing water to rise in a tidal manner over the sea walls and rush to the land around the coastal areas. We have flashy floods. Flashy flood occurs after a heavy rainfall. After a heavy rainfall due to, can also be as a result of the collapse of dams. Urban floods caused by poor drainage in built-up areas where water faces difficulty flowing as a result of poor drainage. Groundwater floods. When water table rises above the surface, there is prolonged rainfall. As a result of prolonged rainfall, it leads to flood. Here are the causes of floods, where the picture or the image clearly portrays, explains. Look at what is happening in the image above, on top. You have people using their umbrella to show that the rain is falling, and these people are walking inside. As you can see, water is all over, everywhere, as the flashy flood we are talking about. The melting of snow. Snows, the polar ice cap in cold areas and permafrost regions around the Alaska, around the Arctic region, northern regions of Russia, Canada, and even the United States of America, where most ice that were formed around the Pleistocene, Quaternary Ice Age era, due to global warming, are gradually melting and rushing down towards lowland surface, and in the course of that, this water gets into the sea, gets into the rivers, gets into the ocean, which increases the water table, which increases the sea level, leads to high tide, causing water to overspill the sea walls, the river banks, and rush to the land. Like what you have here, spring floods in the Midwest of USA in 2019. And in 2010, talking about intense and prolonged rainfall was observed in Pakistan. Heavy monsoon rain caused Indus River to overflow, affecting more than 20 million persons. Storm surge from tropical cyclones and tsunamis. Hurricanes, the tropical storm pushed seawater inland. Water rushes to the land, leading to floods. An example or a case in point is seen with the occurrence of a hurricane at Katrina that was in 2005. The storm surge inundated the New Orleans, causing levee failure and catastrophic flood, resulting to over 1,800 dead. Topography. Lowland areas are more liable and vulnerable, susceptible to floods. In 2011, at Brisbane, that is in Australia, there was a very terrible flood as a result of the topography. Low-lying areas experienced severe flooding as Brisbane River overflow due to heavy rainfall. Brisbane in Australia. Soil saturation. When the rain falls heavily, the ground becomes wet. This leads to increase in runoff. Yes, the soil becomes saturated with moisture. That leads to runoff. Runoff explains the horizontal movement of water on the surface. In 2021, a European flood, intense rainfall that saturated the ground in Germany and Belgium, leading to overflow of the Ore River and a significant damage. Over 2,000 fatalities. Blocked river channels due to debris and vegetation sediment. Now we move to the human anthropogenic causes of floods. The first is deforestation. Deforestation reduces interception and infiltration. Yes, interception is when the roofs of buildings and leaves of trees capture water. And infiltration is that vertical movement of water within the soil pore spaces down to the ground. So, a reduction in interception and infiltration leads to runoff, which causes flashy flood. Remember I said flashy flood results from a heavy rainfall after the soil becomes saturated. Example is in the Amazon rainforest, with deforestation around Brazil leading to increase in runoff into Rio Madeira and frequent experiences of flood. Urbanization increases impervious surfaces like roads and roofs. In 2010, at Nashville, that is USA, rapid urban flood occurred where the Cumberland River resulted to over 2 billion damages. Poor drainage system. The poor drainage system is a hindrance to the flow of water, retards the movement of water. This often leads to floods, as clogged drains and narrow culverts. Failure of dams and poor management. Most dams, maybe during construction, actually do not follow the standards of construction, where there was poor mixture and use of less resistive methods for concreting. This often with time leads to failure that might cause floods. As you can see, urbanization, this is an urban area. You see water everywhere. as a result of poor drainage, as a result of heavy rainfall. Look at poor drainage here. Yes. Water faces difficulty in flowing, and in the course of that, it spills onto the land, causing flood. The effects of flood. You look at this, you see what happened. It's talking about the effect of flood. Look at what floods can do. This is what we go through all the time in our different communities. Loss of lives. So you see, by being drowned or swept, about 250,000 deaths were recorded surrounding coastal areas during an Asian tsunami in 2004. The next impact is damage to property and infrastructure, where people's cars are carried away, destroyed. Bridges are destroyed. Look at what happened at the coastal area here. A storm surge might be resulting from a tsunami or a strong hurricane. Bridges have been destroyed. Just imagine the devastating effects of floods. We have loss of cars, houses, roads, and bridges. People become homeless. In 2010, the Pakistan flood severely damaged roads, bridges, buildings. It is estimated that about 5,000 kilometers of roads and 2,000 bridges were damaged in Pakistan 2010 by flooding. Just look at image properly, as already discussed. Health risks. Flood leads to health risks. Look at people in the hospital as a result of injury and health risk problems sustained during floods, like waterborne diseases can be spread, which contaminates. In 2010 at Haiti, there was a Haiti earthquake. With contamination of water that led to the outbreak of waterborne diseases like cholera, which infected hundreds of thousands of people around the area. We move to the measures to combat floods. Measures to combat and manage flooding. We begin with adaptation measures. That is living with the floods. Even though the flood is there, we devise necessary strategies to live with the flood. Not running away, not preventing it from occurring, but to manage the effect. Because most of the time students get confused with this term, talking about adaptation. It is measure to live with what is already happening, so you devise strategies and techniques to live with. So, we have flood forecasting and early warning systems using satellite technology, meteorological data. This center provides early warning to potential floods, allowing community to prepare. Others might prepare to evacuate the area if informed. Construction of raised houses and flood-resistant structures. Yes, buildings that could resist floods and grazing the surface area to construct houses, so much so that during flood, water will be unable to rush onto the surface where you live with your family. Evacuation plans and community education. Most at times, when people are informed, it is better to leave. It's better to leave and only come back when everything has gone down to normal. When the community is equally educated on what to do before flood, it will go a very long way to save people from the negative effects of flood. Flood insurance and emergency response units. Yes, people need to insure themselves so much so that if you are injured, it's no longer your problem alone. The insurance company takes charge and compensates you maybe a bit on the damages incurred. Relocation and zoning restrictions. Yes, most of the time, people are advised to leave the area and relocate to different areas. And the government equally come out with strict measures banning people from constructing in certain areas so as to avoid being a victim of flood. Now we move to mitigation. I want to draw your attention to these two terms. We have seen adaptation, where I emphasize on living with the effects. Now we move to mitigation, which is reducing the causes and impacts of a phenomenon, where flood is a case study here. Because most of the time, questions are asked, you go and you're giving birth a different thing. They ask you a question on mitigation, you're giving adaptation. You should not get confused with these two terms. Now, how do we reduce the causes and impact? The first, structural engineering solution. What is the meaning of that? Dams and reservoirs to control discharge. That is the amount of water passing through a particular point, a particular period of time. Need to be controlled if dams and reservoirs are constructed. It reserves water and control the flow of water downstream. Levees, embankments, and flood walls. Levees, they are natural sea walls that are rivers elevated on the right and left banks of the river to keep water within the channel, while an embankment here, levee is natural and the embankment could be human-made along the sea walls, while flood walls too are created. The essence here is to keep water within the channel to prevent it from spilling the bank and flowing to the surface. Channel dragging and strengthening. Most of the time, the river channel, with what the way in which it flows is meandering, and so they straighten the bend to allow water flow faster. Straightening the bend will equally create a space, and the volume of water and the water table, the height will reduce as the space has been created to actually conserve much water. Construction of storm drains and retention basins is equally a measure that will reduce the causes of flood and the effects. Non-structural or environmental solutions. Reforestation and afforestation to control flooding. This will go a long way to enhance infiltration, thereby reducing surface runoff. Wetland restoration for natural flood storage. A wetland, simply an area, it could be a swamp with water. Land use planning to avoid floodplains. Climate change mitigation to reduce greenhouse gases. We move to the summary of the lesson, where we have seen the meaning of floods. We've seen the different types of floods. We've examined the causes and the effects of floods. We have seen measures to reduce the effects of flood and impact. We have seen measures to adapt and live with the effects of floods. Now we move over to application exercises. Exercise 1. What is meant by flooding and flood magnitude? Flooding is the overflow of water onto the land that is normally dry. Overflow of water onto a land that is normally dry. Flood magnitude refers to the size, the intensity, and the severity of flood events. It measures how large or serious floods can be. Exercise 2. Outline 3 causes of flood or flooding. Outline 3 causes of flooding. We have heavy rainfall, snow melt, and deforestation. Heavy rainfall, the cause of floods that cause soil saturation, leading to overflow. Snow melt, temperate and cool areas. It's called mountains of great height. Deforestation, reducing interception and infiltration. Exercise 3. State 4 consequences of flooding on humans. State 4 consequences of flooding on humans. Loss of life and displacement of the population. There is loss of life and displacement of the population. The outbreak of waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid. Psychological trauma and food insecurity, as well as disruption of education and health services. Exercise 4. Suggest 5 measures that can be taken to reduce or adapt to flooding. Here are the responses. 1. Evacuation plan and community education. 2. Flooding insurance and emergency response units. 3. Relocation or zoning restrictions in high-risk areas. Construction of dams and reservoirs to control water discharge, stream discharge. Construction, levees and embankments, as well as flood walls. Exercise 4. Then you have multiple choice, MCQ. Which of the following human activity is most likely to increase the risk of flooding? Which of the following human activity is more likely to increase the risk of flooding? A. Afforestation on hill slopes. B, construction of dams and reservoirs. C, deforestation and urbanization. D, practicing contour plowing. The right answer is C, deforestation and urbanization. Slide 5. Which of the following is a social effect of flooding? Which of the following is a social effect of flooding? A, destruction of roads and bridges. B, loss of fertile land. C, outbreak of waterborne diseases and displacement of people. D, deposition of alluvial sediments on floodplains. Right response to answer is C, the outbreak of waterborne diseases and displacement of people. Assignment. Why is flooding common in Marwa, that is the far north region of Cameroon? These are relevant published books that were consulted to build up the lesson. Our next lesson is on the notion of development. Thank you for your team and your kind attention. Stay safe. See you in our next lesson. Goodbye. No.